Well, hello everyone. My name's Bethany. I'm an educator with Singer Sewing Company. And as Felicia mentioned, I am joined by two of my colleagues, Amy and Sonny. So if you see them pop up in the chat, answering your questions or posting links to products that I'm using that are available over on Michaels or Michaels.com or Michaels in their stores, you'll be seeing all of that from them. So they are a part of the team helping out today. Again, if you have a question, please leave it in the chat. If it's one that Sonny can answer with you directly, she will. If it's one that needs to be repeated during the class, she'll let me know. She'll chime in and let me know, and I'll be able to cover that with you. Just to make sure we're all on the same page. This is what we're going to be making today. So this is an embroidered ornament. We're doing embroidery on burlap, which is a material that a lot of people don't realize they or even consider embroidering on. So we're going to embroider on burlap. Actually, a friend of mine in the sewing community had posted where she had embroidered on burlap for like one of those yard flags, the little stakes with the flags. And I was like, I love how that burlap looks with embroidery, and it gave me the idea. So thanks to Candace, we are going to be embroidering on burlap and making this cute little ornament. These are great for gifts. They're very quick and easy to make, and they just have a good wow factor. So we're going to be making this. I even have one hanging on my little tree back here. So make sure that this is the class you are coming to. Just so you all know, we are going to be using Singer's brand new embroidery machine. It's the SE 9180. It is available over on Michaels.com. Amy will definitely be linking the machine and some of the products I'll be using in the class today in the chat, so be able to check that out. So we're going to walk through how to do this project on this specific machine, how to pick the design, edit the design, and stitch it out. And then the last part is we will be putting it in the hoop and doing the final touches. But that's what we're going to go over today. So I think we should just dive right in. But if you have any questions about embroidery, the machine, or anything I'm doing, don't hesitate to ask. I'm so glad you're here. All right, so the first thing we're going to do is switch over to the machine. And I want to first introduce you to the Singer SE 9180. Now, the first thing that kind of gives the wow factor of this machine is the fact that there is a large touchscreen right here on the machine. The only buttons that you're going to have are going to be over here, like speed control, scissor snips, needle up, down, backstitch, and the start stop. So all of your other controls, especially your embroidery design, is going to be controlled right here. Now, one thing that I love to mention is this machine is our first and only Singer embroidery machine that is what's called Wi-Fi enabled, and it allows us to utilize the MySewnet software right here from the screen. MySewnet is our embroidery software. It does come when you purchase the SE 9180, you do get the first 3 months of that software included. So you just have to go on and sign up for it. But it's wonderful because I can access a whole library of designs or access my custom designs that I've made in the software right here on my machine. I don't have to use a flash drive. I can search the library. This little cloud right here is what takes me to my library and to log in, or I can look at my cloud to look at the designs that I've already made that I've saved to my cloud over on the software, so I can access them. So this is wonderful. It just makes the whole process of getting access to your embroidery designs so much easier. So I'm going to X out of that because we are not going to be using the software today. We're just going to pick a design that's built into the machine. So this machine actually has, and I'll kind of scroll through the library here, a lot of designs already built in, and there's some great designs. We're going to be using a little Christmas present. There we go, which is right here. But before I select that, I also want to show you that this machine also comes with 10 built-in fonts. So you have a lot of fun, whimsical fonts and bold fonts and narrow fonts, and you can pick and type out different things. I'm just hitting letters here. So, but you have 3 different sizes for your fonts as well. So maybe you wanted to make an ornament that didn't have the present. You wanted to put someone's family name. You could add the present with the year if you wanted to. So there's a lot of options here that are built right into the machine, which is fantastic. So we're going to go back to this little flower is all of our kind of main designs. And you can search both ways. So I'm going to go backwards this way. And I'm going to select the little Christmas present. There we go. And right up here at the top is a little piece of paper with a pencil. That is our edit mode. So I'm going to tap on that. So now I have this grid, and it's going to be where I kind of edit and design and make changes to it. If I like it just the way that it is, I could hit this little green check mark right here and it hoop my machine and start stitching out. So you do not have to change and edit the design, but for reference, I have little green polka dots on this one, and I just think the red and green really go well together. So I want to use green now, and green polka dots instead of the pink that comes with it. Now I could just leave it like this, and when it tells me to put in the pink thread, remember to put in the green thread. But I don't always remember, and sometimes I like to see what it's going to look like before I stitch it out. So what you can do here is click this little thread icon or tap it. And by the way, this machine does come with this little red stylus, so it does make it really easy to tap and make the selections on your screen. Now it's here going to show the 4 colors that are in this design: white, pink, red, and black. And it shows them in the order that they're stitched out. So since white is selected, it's going to show me where the white thread stitches are going to be. If I select the pink, it's going to show me the polka dots. If I select the red, it shows me the bow. And if I select the black, it does the outline, which gives it a really nice clean finish. But I want to change the pink to green. So I'm going to select the pink, and then I'm going to select it again. When I select it again, it gives me those whole rainbow of color choices, and you can pick one closest to the color that you're going to be using. So let's pick this one. And so it's going to show me over here the color I selected and the color it previously was. In case I want to switch back, I can, but I'm going to keep it at green. And then there's a red X and a green check. So obviously I want to hit that green check. And now my colors show as white, green, red, and black. Okay. Now, if you're doing a design that is mostly white, like let's say a ghost, and you were going to stitch it out on a black fabric, you can change what's called the background color. So if I do this, I can change the background color, and it changes the background of the screen, so I can see how that design is going to look on that color fabric. Obviously, I don't want to blind you all with that bright yellow, so we're going to leave it with the just traditional plain, no background color. All right, so now I'm going to click the green check mark. And so now here back to my edit screen, you can see that my little dots are now green instead of pink. Now, something to note here, and some other symbols that we're really not going to mess around with a lot today, but you can. Now, when I stitched this out in the tutorial, which I know Amy has linked the tutorial for us, or Felicia did, in case you didn't download it yet, you can move this design anywhere on the screen. Wherever you put it is where it will stitch out in the hoop. So with this ornament, you can stitch out 2 of these in the largest hoop that comes with this machine, which is 170 by 100. So you could make 2 ornaments at once. So it's just about working smarter than harder and making the most of your time and your material. So you can do that, but today we're just going to set up to stitch out 1, but you can add and duplicate this, which is also really nice. You can also change the size of it and the position and everything here. So if we wanted to make it bigger, you can go up to 20% bigger, and you can also go to 20% smaller. The reason you can't adjust the sizes more than that is because it will impact the integrity of the design. And it won't look very good if you stretch it out too far, because then there'll be so many spaces between your stitches. It just won't be a very clean embroidery design. So we kind of have a cap on how much you can adjust it. So if you were to bring a design in, you would want to make it the size that you're wanting to stitch out. But this was one on the machine, so I know that I did not change the size for this, and it's a good size design right here, so I'm totally happy with that. It also tells me right here exactly how big that design is, and it also lists how many colors there are and how many stitches. So this design has 9,589 stitches between combined with all 4 colors. Is there an undo button in case you don't like where you move the image to? Absolutely. So you can like do this, but then if I click the center right here, it brings it right back to center. You can also tap and drag right here on the screen, which is also really helpful. So when I duplicate this and I want to stitch out 2, I'm going to bring one towards the bottom and then bring one at the top. Okay. There's also this little undo button here too. So let's say I moved it down here and then I can tell it I don't want to put it there. So there's a lot of different options here. And you just kind of get to play around with it. You can stretch and change the shape of the design too. That's what these do right here. So this is going to make it a really fat present. And this is going to make it a really skinny present. So again, it's totally up to you there. Okay. So I'm going to hit or tap on this little check mark here. And then you can mirror this design. So see how I tap this and it can mirror it either way. So it's, again, this is a subtle difference. It's almost the same on both sides, but there's a slight difference. So you can do that. You can rotate. So if you are hooping your material and you're stitching it out on a material that has a directional pattern, you might want to rotate your design. You can do that as well. You can do it by 90 degrees, 10 degrees, or even 1 degree. So you can do it by very little if you want. And then the other thing I want to note here is if you are like, I don't like this at all, I want to start over, there is a little trash can. You can hit the trash can, it clears your screen. And then this little square with the little side piece, that looks like our hoop. Okay. And just for reference, I'm going to show you one of the hoops. That's our hoop right there. So that's where we tell the machine what size hoop we're going to be stitching out on. And just so you know, the machine does come with the largest hoop size, which is 170 by 100. There are 2 additional accessory hoops that you can get that will work with this machine, 100 by 100 and 40 by 40, which the 40 by 40 is a circular ring spring hoop. And just so you know, the 2 additional accessory hoops are not available on michaels.com just yet, but they are coming soon. So I just wanted to make you aware of that. But you do get the biggest hoop with this machine, which is wonderful. So I'm going to select that one because we're going to use it today. And now that I have that selected and I've got my design just like I want it, I'm going to tap the green check mark. Okay, now it's telling me that there's no hoop attached. As you can see, I do not have a hoop attached yet because I want to show you how to hoop the machine or hoop the fabric before we put it on the machine. So here is my 170 by 100 hoop. And again, we're going to be using this fun burlap. I don't know if you can tell on camera, but this burlap's got like a sparkly gold woven into it. It's very festive Christmas vibes. And then I also have what's called stabilizer. So we've talked about stabilizer in many of the classes before, but just briefly, stabilizer is a must-have when doing embroidery. It definitely comes in handy for other types of sewing projects as well. But what I'm using today is called a tearaway stabilizer. And to know it's a tearaway stabilizer is if I go and kind of tear at the corner, it does tear away. There's also cutaway stabilizer. There's sticky tearaway stabilizer. I'm choosing not to use a sticky because I'm using a burlap and it does want to fray and shed pretty easily. So taking that sticky off of this would not be very fun. So I'm just going to use a regular tearaway. This is going to give my material the stability it needs to support all of these stitches that are so close to each other and right on top of each other. This material already has a large weave to it. So that stabilizer is going to help give these stitches more stability, hence the name stabilizer, so that my design stitches out beautifully and stays nicely on my material. It doesn't perforate through the material and it'll look just like this on the back. Okay, so let's hoop our material. So the stabilizer goes on the bottom or on the wrong side of the material. This burlap really doesn't have a right or wrong side. And then I'm just going to lay my material on top. And then our hoop, this is the 170 by 100. It does have 2 pieces to it. So we're going to take this little screw down here and loosen it until they come apart. So I have the inside piece and I have the outside piece. And the outside piece is what we want to put under the material and under the stabilizer. So I'm going to slide this under, and I am going to make sure that I have given myself plenty of wiggle room because this is a thicker material. You don't want to completely take this screw out because it would be really hard to get it in there even and tight. We just want to loosen it enough to where we can slide this inner piece of the hoop here and line our fabric so that it's nice and tight. This is thicker material, so we want to make sure it's on there. Okay, so I'm going to make sure that my stabilizer fully covers my hoop and my material. And it's getting caught on my little Christmas tree decoration over here. There we go. Now, this is the inside hoop piece. So when we're hooping, I always make sure that the piece that attaches to the machine, this little arm that comes off the side, is to the left. And then this piece right here, it may be hard to see. I'm going to do my best here with the camera angle. There we go. It has the size of the hoop, and then it has the name Singer, and then there's this tiny little arrow right here. I hope that can show up on camera, and that's going to face towards me, okay? And if it helps to remember, there's an arrow at the bottom of this, so you're basically aligning these arrows together, okay? And you just kind of have to feel for it. There we go. So I kind of start at one end, and this material is thick, so it does make it a little challenging to hoop, but I promise it's worth it. The other tip here is be sure that you are hooping on a flat surface. I may need to loosen this just a little more. Like I said, this material is super thick. There we go. Yep. There we go. Once you get it there, and then of course it wants to pop right out. I'm telling you, you have to like just kind of be patient with it, but also tell it who's boss. There we go. All right, so you know when you kind of get it in there, you get all your corners. You want to make sure your fabric is nice and tight. There's no wrinkles, ripples. All right, and then I'm going to come back over here to this little screw, and I'm just going to tighten it. I'm not going to have to tighten it much because this fabric is very thick. And then I'm just going to make sure my corners are laying nice and flat, front to back. There we go. All right, so a little bit of a workout. I promise hooping's not always so challenging, but when you are working with thicker materials, it can be, and you just need to be patient and loosen your hoop a little bit at a time and finagle it in there and make sure it's nice and smooth. So this is what it looks like from the back side. So you can see my corners are lined up, the front piece and the back piece. You can kind of sandwich it between your fingers here like this and kind of tell that they're nice and level and even as if they would be without the material in it. And that is our hoop. Okay, any questions about hooping? Remember, you want this piece under your fabric because we want this to come up and over that arm where we attach it to the machine. If it was underneath, it would get in the way. So it feels like you're doing it backwards, but I promise you're not. You want this little arm of the hoop under your fabric here, okay? All right, so now I'm going to switch real quick for just a second so I don't give you guys a headache by moving my camera. Hold on one second. My little HDMI cord just came out of my port here. There we go. All right. I want to give you a better angle of the hooping process. Okay, so here is my hoop. Here is this little bar here, and this needs to slide into this which is part of the embroidery arm. We want to make sure we're not putting anything on or in the way of the embroidery arm. We want to make sure we have plenty of room around the machine, front, back, and to the side, to make sure it has plenty of room to move for the embroidery. And then we're going to place this hoop onto the machine. Now, one thing that's important to note here is when you go to put the hoop on, sometimes your embroidery foot, let me see if I can angle you down a little more, sorry. There we go. Sometimes the embroidery foot here wants to bump into our hoops. There's a little extra lift to this foot. So the foot goes down, it goes up, and then there's a little extra lift. And sometimes you need to lift that to get the hoop on. Just better safe than sorry than try to force it. And then right here, if you can see this right here, I am aligning this to slide into. And it's going to slide in and click in place. There we go. So it's in there. Kind of have to force it in, but that's normal. And then this is the release button. So when we're done, we'll push that and we'll pull it back out towards us. So it's going to go slide in to lock into place. And then you'll push this release to slide it out to remove it after we're done stitching. Okay. So while I've got that there, we're going to switch back to this mode. And we're going to let it know that we've hooped our machine. So I'm going to tap on the little check. And I'm going to tap on this again. Please raise the needle. The needle is raised. Never gotten that alert before. All right. So all it did was say, yes, there's a hoop here. So we're going to, there we go. Now it's registering the hoop. And now we have a whole new screen. What you're going to see here is the process of the stitching out of your design. Again, we're going to have our same 4 colors. We have the white, we have the green, we have the red, and we have the black. What's really cool next to these colors is it tells us how many stitches per color. So we know how many there are total, but here it tells us how many per color. So we kind of have an idea of how long ballpark each color is going to take. So the black is just the outline. It has 777 stitches. So that's the least amount of stitches out of all the colors. The one with the most is the white, and it's 4,048 stitches. I don't know, the nerd in me kind of loves seeing these numbers. I don't know why. So here we've got a couple other setting things if we need to adjust. But basically what we're going to do is I like to, personally for myself, and this is personal preference, I'm going to lower my foot. Okay, so my foot is lowered. I have my first thread already in the machine. It's the white, which is highlighted right here. That's the first color. It tells me right here where it's going to start stitching. And you'll see that our design is grayed out because as it goes through these colors, it'll fill in. And you can see while it's stitching, it also stitching on the screen, which is really fun. Now, I like to trim my thread before I get started. So there's this little scissor button right here. And what that did is it brought my thread kind of down into the material and it cut the tail. So I can discard that. If you don't do that, you can start your embroidery design. And after a few stitches, you'll want to pause and use some snips to clip that tail off so it doesn't get caught in your design. It just helps keep it clean. And I'm just going to hit this little start button. There we go. Now you see on the screen, it is showing what it's doing right here in the hoop. Now the white is harder to see on camera in this fabric, but it'll start to fill itself in and it's just going back and forth. And it's easier to see it on the screen. So I wanted to show you both at the same time.
So Bethany, I don't know if you're going to talk about this, but will you go ahead and explain like what type of thread you have on top, what you have in bobbin, you know, what type of needle maybe for this, so people
Yes.
can know what you will be doing that, but
yes, actually that's great. And I wanted to make sure that you can hear me over the embroidery machine. So can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Okay, good. sometimes I don't know what the microphone picks up and what it doesn't. So to Sonny's point, when you are doing embroidery, there is called a rayon thread or an embroidery thread. This is the red color I'm going to be using. And it's a beautiful kind of shiny thread. And this is what we typically use for embroidery. And so this is what I have in the top with all of my colors. So I'm using embroidery thread. And let me reach over real quick. Sorry. This spool right here is what's in my bobbin. So this is a bobbin embroidery thread. Typically the bobbin embroidery thread will come with a blue spool, plastic spool like this, whereas the regular rayon thread that you use for the top is in a white spool. So look for those bobbin thread. It's a little thinner and it's great for the backside of the stitches. So that's what's in my bobbin. So you definitely want to set yourself up for success using those types of threads. And then for my needle, I am using an embroidery needle. I know it keeps auto-focusing, but that's because the hoop is moving. Maybe if I move my camera back just a little, it'll probably still do it. So I'm using an embroidery needle, which is really important to use. It's going to be able to withstand this type of stitching and this type of, process. So you definitely want to use an embroidery needle. And to Sonny's point, as she mentioned in the chat, that most embroidery threads are a 40 weight thread and they're very shiny. So here's the green that I'm going to be using. Just gives it this elevated look. I'll show you the final stitch out. And it just looks very nice. And to her point, yes, the bobbin thread, which goes underneath, is a 60 weight. So even though the number is a bigger number, it's actually a thinner thread than the top embroidery thread, which is 40 weight. So great questions. Now, as you can see here, this is really starting to fill in that first square. It's also, I don't know if you can see this on the screen. Let me move a little closer again. It's also counting the stitches as it goes. I don't know if that's going to show up on camera, but it's currently almost to 1,300 stitches out of the 9,500. So you're also seeing the progress in that way as well. It also says that we're 13% done of the design. So again, you can see the progress as you stitch out, which I really love. So it lets me know like how kind of ballpark how long this is going to take. The other thing that's important to note is I can control the speed of my embroidery design as it's being stitched out. So right here is my speed control. If I were to change this, it would adjust the speed of my stitching. So personally, I don't like to do embroidery at the fastest speed. You can, but I personally like to slow it down a little bit, especially when I'm stitching out on a material like burlap or something like that that's a little different than just a cotton woven material. But again, that's personal preference. Now I am going to let this one finish stitching out because I want to show you the next step is changing that thread color. And the prompts that pop up on the screen, I think it's important to experience what that looks like. But this machine really does take the guesswork out of when do I change my thread color? What thread color do I use next? It literally tells you exactly what to do and walks you through the process, which makes it a lot easier when doing embroidery for the first time. Are there any other questions? Because we are about almost halfway through stitching out the white.
So Bethany, there aren't any other questions, but I will you address, like, do you change your, like when you change to your next color, are you going to change your bobbin or are you going to keep the same bobbin and when would you change the bobbin if you would?
Great to call that out, Sonny. Thank you. So no, you do not need to change your bobbin. So when you are doing embroidery, you're going to make one bobbin and your bobbin thread is going to be white no matter what color your top thread is. And you do not need to change your bobbin every time you change the color because that would require you to take this hoop off the machine and then change the bobbin and rehoop the machine. So to make it easy, we just use the bobbin thread in the bobbin. And we leave that same thread in for our entire design. The only time that you would need to change your bobbin is if you run out of bobbin. And your machine will usually tell you, or you'll know when it's time to change it because it will no longer be doing the stitches like it should be. So that's the only time. So for me, when I'm setting up to do an embroidery design, I always check my bobbin and make sure that I have enough on my bobbin spool before I start my design, because I really don't want to have to change my bobbin mid design stitch out. So just for example, this is how much I had left on my bobbin before class, and I immediately was like, no, I mean, it would probably be okay because we're not stitching out the whole thing today, but I wasn't going to risk it, especially during class. So I wound a new bobbin, and I put a fresh one in there so I would not run out of bobbin thread during the class. Sonny does make another point as well that you can, you don't have to use the white thread in the bobbin. You can use a darker thread if you're doing, like, let's say you were doing this on a darker material on top, and you don't want that bobbin to potentially show through to the front, or you want it to blend in better from the backside. You can use a different color bobbin thread, like a darker color or a black for black fabrics. Oh, right. And see, this is like watching it color in the lines, isn't it? It's a very satisfying process to watch. I will switch to this camera for a second and let you see how this arm is moving. Again, we want to make sure we're leaving it a nice, clean, clear space. This camera jiggles a little more because it is attached to my table here. Now, while this is stitching out, I thought I would take a second to show this little embroidered ornament that I did as well. This is a Santa that I found on our My Sewnet library. So I was able to pick this right on my screen from the My Sewnet library. And this is actually sewn on felt. And I did a little stuff. I put my family's last name and the year. So this would make a really cute gift. So this is just another way that you can use embroidery to make an ornament. And have some fun with it and really decorate for the holidays. But these are super fun and quick to do, and you can embroider on felt, you can embroider on burlap, you can embroider on wovens and knits. There's just different things to do for each.
And
how do you
Bethany,
pause and restart stitching if you need to step away? That's a great question. So let me go back to this. I can either pause right here on the screen, and I just hit the pause button. It just got so much quieter in my studio. Embroidery does make a lot of noise, but I just hit the pause button right here on the screen. You can also pause by tapping this little start stop button as well. And then when you're ready to resume the stitching, you would just hit the start right there, and it picks right back up. Now, another thing that can happen, and I'm just going to pause again for a second. Let's say my thread breaks. It does happen. What you need to do is lift the foot and rethread the machine. And if it breaks a few stitches back from where it kept going before you realized and stopped it, you can use this little button right here. It's a needle with a plus and minus. And if you select that, then I can minus or plus, I can readjust and have it go back a few stitches so it picks up where it broke. Or I would actually go a few stitches back from before where it snapped, just to make sure that I'm catching it. So if your thread does break, you can go back into some of the stitches, back up into the stitch pattern to be able to pick up basically where you left off. And pick up without ever knowing that your thread ever broke in your design. And that it does happen sometimes with any embroidery, but it is good to know that you can get back to where it stopped, and there's not going to be a space or a gap in your design. So we're almost done here. A few more stitches. We're going to let this finish out. We're going to do a thread change. I'll show you what that looks like, and then we'll go into actually putting this together into the ornament. But Kathy, thank you for that question. That was a fantastic question. And it led me to talk about other things too, so it was helpful. I'm just curious, can you all hear it stitching out? Or is it blocking the background noise? Because sometimes with sewing tutorials, it does block it. And sometimes you can hear the machine, so I was just curious. It's quiet, okay, but you can hear the stitching, or is it just silent?
It's pretty silent, Bethany.
Okay. I think Amy said it's pretty quiet. It's hard for me to hear you over the totally silent. Okay, well, it is a little noisier in here. It's stamping these stitches through. So we're almost done. We have less than 100 stitches left, and they go pretty quickly. You can see it's filling in this last little corner down here. Almost there. We have less than 50 stitches. It's fun. It's like a little New Year's countdown, isn't it? Oh, there we go. All right, so now it's popped up. I'm going to actually adjust my camera here. Let me slide this over. There we go. So you can see here on the screen, it says change thread, and I'm going to hit OK. But before I do, I am going to change the thread. So one thing I would like to note, and I'm going to switch to this. Hello. Is I like to trim my thread or snip my thread from the top right here by the spool and take the spool off. And then I'm going to lift my presser foot and pull that thread through the needle here. But it looks like my thread broke right at the very end of my last stitch. I said threads do break sometimes, and they do. It literally got it at the very end, so I can't even tell that it did it on the stitch out. But normally you wouldn't pull your thread out from the top. You would pull it out from the needle. You want the thread to feed through the machine like it should. But because I couldn't reach it here, I kind of had to pull it from up here because it broke. But normally you would trim your thread at the top and then pull your thread out from the bottom. And that would be how you would remove that excess thread out of your machine. You don't want to pull the whole spool and thread tail from the needle all the way out backwards out of the machine. Okay, so let's switch back over here. My next thread color is going to be green, so I know that it's now highlighted. I'm going to tap this little check mark. So this is the color I want to do next. I have my green, and I'm going to thread my machine here. Let me switch over here so you can see it. So I have it on my machine, and I am going to thread it all the way down. You want to make sure that the embroidery foot is up, so you have released the tension and can easily thread it through the machine. And then just so you know, I know you can't see it from that angle, but over here on the left hand side, I wonder if you can see it. Maybe if I adjust this. Okay, a little bit. This right here on the side, that's the needle threader. You see that dropping down? So with our other machines, you would have the button under here that you would push down, and it's kind of hard to do. It works, but it is, you've got both of your hands in here and it's hard to see. But now we have on this machine, on the 9180, we have the button up here on the side. So this hand is nice and out of the way, and I only have one hand coming in here to hold the thread. And that's my needle threader. You definitely want to learn and master your needle threader on your machine, because when you're switching out your embroidery color every single time, it just makes it so much easier to be able to use that needle threader. So now that I have my thread in place, I am going to lower the foot. There's a little scissor button here. I like to trim my thread tail, and then I would hit not hit, that's awful. I would tap the play button to get the stitching going again. And now it's going to stitch out my little green dots. Because remember, originally the design had pink dots and we switched, then changed the color to green so we would know what it looked like. And it's going to stitch those out. It's going to let it do the one. And then we're going to stop and go and put this whole ornament together really quickly. There we go. So now it's on to the second one. I'm going to pause it for now. And I'm going to adjust my camera over here real quick so we can piece this ornament together. And let's see here. Where is there? Okay, perfect. Well, there's a little sun glare coming in the afternoon sun. I apologize. Okay, so here's one that I stitched out before class because I knew that this embroidery design would take a little longer than we have time together. So this is the design in the middle of my fabric. This is the tearaway stabilizer on the back. And it just tears away all the way around the design. How easy was that? Super easy. Now that stabilizer is still in here. It just perforated around the edge. That stabilizer is still in here supporting these stitches, which is fantastic because I want it to stay nice and even looking in my ornament. And so basically what I'm going to do now is just put this together. I've got these little wooden rings from the craft store. And they come in different sizes. I'm using a 3-inch one. You can use a 4-inch ring if you want. These are these little wooden hoops. You can use a 4-inch. Just note that if you are stitching this design out in the larger hoop size, you would only be able to stitch out one at a time. But in order to make more than one ornament at a time in the bigger hoop size that we use today, you could put one up here and one down here and use this smaller hoop size. So what we're going to do is we're going to, you know how earlier we hooped and this was on the underside for our embroidery hoop? Well, this time it's going to be the opposite because we want this to be on top. Okay, so I'm going to place the inside ring on the back side of my design and try to center it and hold it as best I can and flip it over. And try to, with my hands, you can kind of see, make sure it's centered in that hoop. And again, we need to loosen this as far as we can and widen that hoop. Be able to get it over the burlap. You definitely want to remove the stabilizer first because it's really hard to get it over that. So you definitely take off that excess stabilizer first. And I'm going to just kind of make sure that this is even all the way around, front to back, and start to tighten this hoop. Now these are wooden, so we don't want to tighten it so much that, you know, this thin bent wood cracks or anything. But yeah, that's about as tight as I can get this one. So that works perfect. And I'm going to use some fabric scissors and I'm going to trim off my excess material. You want to leave about 1 inch all the way around because we're going to fold this over the hoop and secure it in place with a little hot glue gun action. We are getting a little crafty today with our project, which I love. I love anytime I can use a hot glue gun. I find them to be so much fun. There we go. All right. Let me clean up my mess here. By clean up, I mean throw it in my floor. All right, so here is the back side of it. Here is the front. And I'm going to use my hot glue gun and I'm just going to do a little at a time. We're just going to fold this over.
So Bethany, before you fold that over completely, if you use like a pinking shear or something, that's actually really cute having that little bit
It is
out like that. That's kind of fun.
It is cute. Or if you used like one of those like decorative scissors that has not just like the pinking shears that gives the zigzag, but one that has like waves or whatever, you could maybe even like add a little trim to that. That would be super cute.
And I was thinking even lace or something might be fun. That's really cute.
I love that idea. Or you could, Sonny, since we're playing around with ideas, I love the creativity. We could fold this in and then glue some lace to this edge that would show around to the front side. That would be another option. So yeah, you can definitely make this your own and have some fun with it, add some other embellishments. But I love a good hot glue gun moment for sure. And it doesn't take a lot. And I am going to end up with hot glue on my fingers for the rest of the day. But that's okay, that's the fun of crafting. It's not a fun project if it doesn't get a little messy sometimes. There we go. And you could go back in and really secure that all the way around. And that's what it looks like from the front. And then I like to take a little dab of glue here and add a little bow. And then you can add a ribbon. You could add a string, something to put through the top here and give it your little loop to hang it on your Christmas tree or garland or wherever you want to place your embroidery hooped design. And there you have it. We made a new one. I don't know if you can see, but this one I used a brighter red and a brighter green, and this one I used a darker red and darker green. And I mean, I love both. This is where you can really change the look of an embroidery design by your color choices alone. So there you have it. We did an entire embroidered ornament together. I hope you all enjoyed it. Got some great tips on embroidery, especially for beginners if you've never done embroidery before. I hope you realize that this machine, the Singer SE9180, is a great machine for beginners because it really does walk you through all of the steps. And I hope you take some time to make an embroidered ornament for the holidays and maybe gift one and then keep one for yourself too. All right, so don't forget to make yourself one. Now, if you do make some embroidered ornaments, we would love it if you shared your pictures on social media and use a couple of the hashtags that Felicia just dropped in the chat, which is hashtag Michael's Classes, hashtag Make It with Michaels, hashtag Learn with Michaels. We have new ones. I love these new hashtags, Felicia. And also Singer Sewing, hashtag Singer Sewing, because we would love to see your finished projects. Again, thank you so much. Now, I do want to quickly mention before we sign off that we have some exciting things coming in the new year with Singer teaching classes with Michaels. You know, we've been doing these for about 2.5, almost 3 years now. And we love doing these classes with you every month. But in the new year, for the first 3 months of the year, so January, February, and March, we're going to be doing a class every single week. I know. So you're going to get a sewing class every single week on Thursday. Now we're going to start it the second week of January because we know people are getting back into the swing of things the first week of January, new year, and school getting back and everything. So I wanted to quickly tell you that for January, we've got 4 teachers, myself, Sonny, who's been asking those questions today. We have Amanda and we have Becky. So I definitely recruited some help to be able to teach you all a class every single week. And we're all teaching kind of a different thing. So Sonny is going to be teaching the first class, going over needles, presser feet, and stitches. So really kind of getting familiar with those parts of your sewing machine. So if you've just got a sewing machine or your Santa's bringing you one for Christmas or you're getting one for Christmas, this would be a great class to just get to know those aspects of your sewing machine. Or maybe you just haven't played around with some of the stitches and presser feet and you want to learn what they do, the ones that come with your machine even. So she's going to go over that and also talk about needles. There's so much to needles that people don't realize and the importance of changing the needles and selecting the right type of needle for your project. So she's going to talk about all of that. The next week, I'm going to be teaching a project-based class and we're going to be making a needle book. It's got little pockets, got little felt pages. And so this is where you can keep your needles. So let's say the next project I want to do is sewing and I want to switch this machine to sewing mode, but I don't want to use my embroidery needle, but it's still a great embroidery needle. I don't need to throw it away yet. I can stick it in here and mark it as an embroidery needle so I can save it for the next project. So this is what we're going to be making up together in my class. And then Amanda's going to do a class on mending. Specifically denim and jeans. So maybe you want to learn how to properly do some mending, patching holes or hemming jeans. So she's going to go over that. And then Becky is going to do what's called a 3-part in quilting class. So it's going to run her class project is going to go from January, February, and March in 3 parts of doing a quilted project together. So we have a lot in store for you. And then we have more projects and classes for February and March. I know that was a mouthful. and it's a lot to take in. But just know, if you hear nothing, every Thursday, we will be doing a class for the first 3 months, starting the second week of January. So I know that Amy just dropped the first class in Thursday, January 11th. It's always at the same time, same place, just like today. So we hope to see you there. Just be sure you go to michaels.com and sign up for the classes so you're notified and you get the info and instructions. Okay. All right. Well, happy holidays. Thank you so much for hanging out with us. Our last class of 2023. I'm so grateful to have spent another year with you all teaching these classes. I hope you have a wonderful holiday, and I'll see you in the new year. Thanks again. Bye.